the Salary Commission has resolved a long-standing problem. And had we not done that, we would still have the same problem. So the Salary Commission feels that it did resolve a problem, and the problem was with the inversions, and so we no longer have these inversions, and we've taken care of what we call unsatisfactory salary deficiencies. The Commission has been transparent. We have followed to the letter of the law. We have no violations with regard to the Sunshine Law, the publication of notices, acceptance of testimony. All business was conducted in open sessions. There were never any executive sessions. All business complied with the procedures and Sunshine Laws. There were never any violations. Okay, I mentioned that. We took care of a long-standing problem and solved a long-standing problem. And we'll continue to resolve future salary issues. And we're looking at not allowing this to happen in the future, to put in place something that we will not have these long lapses. We have a draft proposal that's on the table that's being developed right now, but I am really confident that when we finish this, this commission will be very pleased with what it's finally put out there. The County of Hawaii will be very pleased with what will be in place at the time, so that this will avoid having these long lapses at times and trying to adjust salaries that are so arrears. And there are meetings that are going to be occurring this week with the Department of Human Resources. The Vice Chair and I will be meeting to hammer out the details on that so that we can bring it forth to the Salary Commission for discussion. But unilaterally across the entire commission, its members really want to address this issue so that it doesn't happen again. And it's really a travesty that we were left with this thing and this problem to resolve. So the Salary Commission was in a very difficult position, and due to the lack of action that should have taken place, unfortunately, we were faced with notably large dollar amount and percentage increases, which seemed to be the focus of all the information that was out there rather than the work that the Commission had done. So with that, that's the end of my my discussion with you today, and I would welcome any questions.
I really feel that your explanation of your duties, and I appreciate Mr. Higgins being here also. Mr. Ono, really quickly before I yield, could you just give us a brief background?
I've been a resident of this county for a little short of 50 years and came over here to work. I was with a construction company called Hawaiian Dredging and Construction. But when the job was POW, I was headed back to Oahu and onto other projects. But I told myself, why are you leaving here? So that's why I've been here so long. But since that time, I am a civil engineer by background. And I worked in both the state and county governments. I worked for the State Highways Division. I worked for the Department of Accounting and General Services. I worked for the County of Hawaii as its Public Works Director, and retired close to 20 years ago, and have been in private practice. But I have been both a collective bargaining union employee. I've been an EM position, or excluded management, and I've been an appointed. So I understand it very well. And the story I tell our Salary Commission is that when I was appointed, I was the director of Public Works, and I had division heads reporting to me, like the building division, the wastewater division, engineering division, and they were EM level. So every time that there'd be a negotiated pay raise, they would get a pay raise and they'd jump up above me. And if nothing happened to our pay, they'd jump up again above me. So I used to tell them, gosh, I wish I could become an EM someday, just like you. But I got my wish. Someplace along the line, I was offered the job at the state highway back in the Hawaii district. And so I got that position. And when I got that, I told them, hey guys, guess what? I'm an EM now, just like you. But anyway, that's my background, engineering and management, and that's it.
That's very outstanding, and thank you for sharing that with us. I think that gives us a better feel of the caliber of people that we have sitting on the Salary Commission. So thank you very much, and I will yield to my fellow council members at this time.
Okay, thank you, Ms. David, and thank you, Mr. Ono. Council members, Ms. Leloy.
Yeah, I've had incredible amounts of faith of the caliber of the members of the commission and the background and the skill sets that all of you possess on that salary commission. And in no way I'm trying to undermine any of those hardworking skill sets that you folks bring to the table. And I continue to have a lot of confidence in that entire body going forward. You're absolutely correct. You folks worked very hard to address a lot of inequities. You guys picked up something that was dead on arrival with no real movement for many, many years. And so I can appreciate all of the hard work and the challenges that you guys went through. I like it when people get put in tough situations. It really brings out the best in an individual. So thank you folks so much, and thank you for providing all of that background information. I do have just one question. You mentioned in your report that you guys were briefed on the law and the sections, and maybe, I know Amy Self is here, maybe she could help you with this. I understand the section of the charter, I believe it's 13-28, that gives the Salary Commission that authority. But you also mentioned a state law.
Could you identify yourself first?
I'm sorry, Deputy Corporation Counsel Amy Self. The state law that Mr. Ono mentioned is 89C-3, but that actually does not apply to the Salary Commission. But they're looking at that as an example of what they may end up trying to do for Tier 2. 89C-3 is the state law that requires each county, through recommendation of their Human Resources Director, to set up a system for exempt managers?
Yes.
Excluded managers will be paid the same or more. I'm not getting it exactly right, but something like that. Than their, like for instance, every time it says that they should be paid the same or more than the civil service positions. So in other words, whenever there's a system in place by state law so that whenever the unions negotiate a salary increase for the civil servants, then the excluded managers will also go up by a certain percentage. So that's one of the things they've been looking at regarding their job to do the same sort of thing for the appointed positions and the elected positions.
A follow-up to that was, it was the understanding of the Salary Commission that their decision was final. Share with me the area of the charter or state statute that gave them that authority in which their decision became the force and effect of law. I hope I'm saying it correctly.
Well, that's because under the charter, they're the ones that set the salaries for the appointed and elected positions. And if you look at section 13-28, little d, says that they shall review and compensate all county elected officials and appointed directors and deputy directors so that their total salaries and benefits have a reasonable relationship to compensation in the public and private sectors. So nobody else sets these salaries except the Salary Commission.
And then I want to draw your attention to letter C. The commission shall establish its rules of procedure, which shall provide that it meet at least annually and adopt rules and regulations all county elected officials, oh wait, sorry, did I read that right? Rules and regulations having the force and effect of law. So that's where we legislatively gave them the power to make these salary determinations and have their decision be final.
No, that just gives them the authority to make their own rules. They have their own rules of procedure, just like any other board or commission. But the authority comes in Section D.
D.
And I looked at the legislative history for the Salary Commission. Originally, they were created to set the salaries just for the council members, council chair and the council members. And then they later had other charter amendments which broadened that authority to include them setting the salaries for all elected officials and appointed directors and deputies.
And is that section 444 under our charter? Is that? On the legislative history, because there's a provision under section 44 about advisory commissions. The way I'm reading the charter is we have advisory boards and then we have a separate salary commission.
Oh, you're section 4-4 of the charter. That's just for the mayor to appoint advisory commissions, and then they only serve as long as the mayor's term. It doesn't include any of the other commissions that, like all your other boards and commissions that are set up by the county code and or the charter. This is just so that if the mayor wants to have an advisory commission for him, those have been set up in the past. They only serve as long as the mayor serves, and then they're automatically, their terms automatically end.
And then under section 13-3 of our charter, there's an adoption of a payment plan. And it says all persons employed by the county or any of its boards or commissions, whether as an officer or otherwise, except those who is paid otherwise provided for, shall be paid in accordance with a pay plan enacted by ordinance.
Oops, I'm sorry. Which section are you looking at?
Section 3-13 of our charter. There's an adoption of a payment plan. Oh no, Deanna's coming.
Oh, okay. I think Deanna may be able to expound on anything about finance. You want to explain this one?
And
it doesn't apply to.
Yeah, see, and that's what I'm trying to get to.
Yeah,
is that this?
I was just going to say real briefly that Deanna, the finance director, that I believe this is a salary ordinance that you guys adopt annually that applies to yet another group of people not covered by other pieces.
Because what I'm trying to get to is how the salary commission understands their role, and they have been given a lot of authority to affect pays for elected officials. And all of that is covered under 13-28, or 13-3028, A, B, C, and D. And the legislative intent at that time was to give that body the authority to make those adjustments.
Correct.
Okay, so then I have to pan out a little bit because I'm stuck with the duties, powers, roles, and responsibilities of the different branches of government. And we have that executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judicial branch. And it's my understanding, may I have one more time, Chair?
Go ahead, Ms. Lima, finish.
It's my understanding that the county council is vested with that authority of setting the budget. And so I'm trying to find a balance or where we kind of turned over that authority to the salary commission.
The voters actually set this up. This didn't just happen. I mean, this went to, it was a ballot initiative. So like I said, as far back as I could find when this first began, which was 1974, Ordinance number 56, it was to create the salary commission to determine the salaries for the, I think it was just the council, it said council chairman and the council members. From that point forward, I can't remember the exact changes, but the last change was
2006.
There's these different propositions, so those went to the election.
Yeah.
So it was actually the voters of the county that created this commission and gave them this authority. And as far as you were asking, did I cover your question?
Yeah, it did. I mean, because I did the legislative intent and looked at Prop 10 and Prop 13, I think was another one from 1974 and again in 79 and then again in 2000 and 2006. So I took a real good check of how we got here. And, you know, we'll have a different conversation about another piece of legislation. But I just wanted to have that fundamental understanding on the authorities.
May I have a moment at some point in time?
Yes, you can respond.
Well, I'm not responding to that specifically, but just let me mention that, you know, what we went through was really, really tough stuff. We were handed a prerequisite position that's just really so difficult to deal with. At this point in time, you know, I would suggest that on this charter amendment proposal that if you can defer it until we're finished with our next tier 2, because I believe when we come up with whatever we come up with, that you're going to be well satisfied that this situation won't be occurring like it has in the past, because we're going to build into there something which will not give these 10, 20, 30, 40% raises. You know, I don't see that happening again. The commission voted unanimously at its last meeting that they're really concerned about this charter amendment and what it would do to a process that is can be long already to make it even more cumbersome and longer.
Chair,
so,
point of order, please.
Thank you, Ms. Levi.
I'm not trying to cut you off, Mr. Ono, but what we have before us is your presentation. And actually, if you could stick around for that conversation when we talk about a proposed ballot amendment that I initiated, I feel that what you're sharing right now would be better served in that context.
Okay, I apologize. I may not be able to stick around, but I apologize.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. Ono.
Yeah, I got what I needed. And again, Mr. Ono, no disrespect, it's It's how
No,
we
understand.
have to operate too. And you shared, you guys have real strict sunshine laws too, so
Not a problem.
thank you.
I know
Thank
there's several council members who wish to speak, but I'm
Yeah.
going to go to, thank you, I'm going to ask Ms. Ruggles if she still has a comment. Okay, go ahead.
You mentioned that there's a policy somewhere, or you were advised to not consider the budget when considering the salary increases. Could you please share with us where that policy is stated?
It was information that was furnished to us by testimony or representation. We actually heard many different sides of it, that there were not any funds within the current budget. And then we also heard that there were, but primarily from my recollection, the adjustments that we came up with, the commission concluded that the county would be able to fund them.
Thank you. My question is, did you say that you were advised to not consider the budget?
I may have said that.
Okay. And is that something that, so you were advised by certain testifiers, you're saying?
I may have said that. I don't recall clearly. That may not be a true representation.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't put too much weight on that.
Okay. My second
so.
question is, you mentioned that there was a report done by the County of Hawaii that says raises can't go above 3 to 4% per year or something like that.
It's in the county's annual financial report. It was Commissioner Dr. Dow that shared that with us at the last meeting, and something that he found within this report.
Do you happen to know what year this report is?
I believe it's for this current fiscal year.
Okay, that's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Ruggles. Council members? No, okay. Mr. Richards.
Mr. Ono, thank you so much. Actually, thanks for the presentation. I commend your courage for trying to make things right and fix things, and I do appreciate the comments concerning private sector and attracting good talent to help us run our county, because we're all vested in the county. We want this to be successful, and so that's a difficult balance to find. And like I said, courage, you guys went after it. The problem and the pushback you're hearing from the council is kind of a perfect storm as far as the tax side versus the increases. And what we're trying to do is understand the process. You have your job to do. The reason for these conversations is we have our job to do as well, and we're trying to strike the balance. And so please don't take this as an adversarial type of conversation. Thank you. We can disagree and still be friends.
Absolutely.
Okay, so that's where the push comes from. And we're trying to find that, and I do anticipate and look forward to when you finish your next report. But please understand, that's where the conversation is coming from. You guys took a bold step. We appreciate the strength it takes to do that. We're trying to find that balance as going forward. So just comments, I'll yield at this point.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, council members? Seeing none, would it be okay if I asked a question too? Does anybody object? Or Eileen, did you have any comments or questions? Okay. Okay. Well, so thank you, Mr. Ono. I think it's important that our constituents and everybody understands that the history of setting the salary commission was through a charter amendment, basically because it doesn't seem right that council members would set their own salaries. So if that was the original intention, and then I don't know how it grew from there to include those salaries of other appointed officers of the county and directors and deputies, but I believe it's a completely understandable and now should be made public that the purpose for the salary commission in the first place, and kind of take the politics out of council members involved in setting their own salaries from the beginning. I realize that you're going to make adjustments to your own rules and procedures to deal with some of the issues that have surfaced due to the fact that this 3 to 4%, which was a suggested annual increase to keep up with certain standards and economic changes, hadn't been achieved. I don't know why. I don't know why the previous commissions in the years past didn't take that into consideration or weren't advised that way, but it did make this current adjustment unusual, I guess, and hence the concerns and this presentation, et cetera. But I thank you for putting all of that on the record and helping us all to understand the situation you were in, and that you do have intentions to correct that in your next, I guess your next meeting. You're going to review your rules of procedure?
Yes. Our next
okay,
meeting
well, I would
is,
look forward to that report. And
I don't know whether we're going to get to a conclusion at our next meeting, but certainly, you know, we've been eager to start this dialogue about addressing what's going to happen in the future. You know, we've dealt with what's happened in the past, so we don't want to do that anymore, believe me.
Well, thank you very much. And whenever that report's ready, I'm sure we'll be interested in hearing
you will know
what
about
your
it,
suggestions. Yes. Okay, council members, are we ready to close file on communication 742? Okay. All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Okay, we now have 8 ayes. Councilmember Kanuha is still absent. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm going to relinquish the chair back to the finance chair, Ms. David.
Mahalo, Vice Chair Eoff, and let the record show that I've resumed the chair of this committee. Mr. Clerk, I think we can go to the top of the agenda because, and then as we get to